This
of
conference
the
will now
library
be
meeting,
recorded.
and I don't mind saying it's being recorded. I'm late. I apologize to all the committee members, but I was actually at a Friends of the Library meeting virtually. I've met new members, so all things are good. So hopefully, I can get the agenda on my computer. I think we're good to go. So, do we have quorum, Holly?
Yes, we do have quorum.
Okay. And that is good. Thank you for everyone being here tonight. I am just switching over from one thing to the other. Give me a bit of grace. Okay.
Martin, Jennifer
Yes,
Dion
Jared.
will not be attending tonight. I
Okay.
did.
Well, Holly said we have quorum, so we can get started.
I also have
Yes.
Jan Powell on the phone line connection, so she can hear the proceedings. But we're connected by phone. If she has anything to say, then she'll ask me to present it to you, to the group. Okay?
Okay, well, that's fine. Yeah, thank you, Jerry. Like I said, I have the agenda on my computer and I have to use the iPad, so I don't see all of you. So if you want to move or second it, just shout it out and we'll go from there. Okay? So thank you very much. So we will call to order at 7:02 the Southgate Affordable Attainable Housing Committee. The confirmation, that was the call to order. Confirmation of agenda. Be resolved that, yes.
Sorry, it's Holly. I'm just wondering if we could amend the agenda to move item 7.3, the draft official plan policies, in front of item 7.1. Ron Davison is here to speak to that, just so he doesn't have to wait around to get to him.
Well, I'm okay with that. Thank you for the amendment. So all the committee members okay with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no problem.
Nodded heads. Okay, so confirmation of agenda, be resolved the committee confirm the agenda as amended. Do we have a mover and a seconder?
I'd like to add another amendment. Could we add somewhere just a brief discussion of the survey, the community survey? And it can go in under, new business if that's appropriate.
Well, Jerry, I thought we were going to be talking about that anyway, but
Okay, just as long as we cover it, Martin, that's all.
Councillor Shipston, It's Holly again.
Yes, Holly.
Sorry, I believe that Dave was going to touch on it in his staff update, which would be point 7.1, item 7.1.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
So that's the ranking. The survey is actually what we had been talking about actually for a couple of meetings now. The actual survey that would go out to the public. Am I confusing the two things? Jennifer,
as chair, Jerry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's maybe a confusion between the two things because the survey And the task force was not the survey going out to the public. So that's what I thought. So
How about we go ahead with the amendment that you have on the floor? When we come to new business, maybe I have a chance then to just to talk to that a little bit.
okay, well, that's fine with me. So
I will move the amendment.
is that fine with every? Yeah. So confirmation of agenda, be resolved, the committee confirm the agenda as presented, the amended agenda as presented. Mover and seconder. I have to go through this again.
I will. Morgan.
Morgan.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Seconder.
I'll second it.
Thank you. That was Muriel.
Mm-hmm.
Can't see you, but I know your voice. So there we go. Okay. We'll go to item number 4, the declaration of pecuniary interest. If you have any, say it now and send it to Holly, I guess, or present it sometime through the meeting. Number 5 is delegations and presentations. We have none tonight. So we come to item number 6, the adoption of minutes. Be it resolved that the committee approve the minute. Well, adoption of minutes. Was there any questions about the adoption?
I move the
Hearing
minutes.
none, be it resolved that the committee approve the minutes from the February 22nd. Very good. Seconder?
Michael here. I'll second it.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, we're into number 7, staff updates. The 7.1, which I think Jerry mentioned, Southgate Attainable Housing Task Force recommendations. Committee prioritization ranking March 14th, 2022.
Martin, we were going to bring up 7.3 first of the official plan on the agenda if we could for Ron Davidson to speak. And
Yeah, okay, my apologies to everyone. We'll bring that forth then. Again, my apologies. So go ahead.
so maybe I'll introduce Ron. Ron's our planner, and he's leading the official plan review. And Clint was unable to attend tonight, so he asked Ron to graciously sub in. And in actual fact, we're very lucky to have Ron because he's the spearhead before, in front of this official plan. And if there's any difficult questions, I'm sure he's the guy to ask. But without further ado, I'll just turn it over to Ron to talk about the official plan in relation to affordable housing and any other questions that the members may have after he presents.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, folks. And thank you, councilors, and for bumping this up and for Holly's suggestion that we do that. That's I appreciate that. Makes mine a little bit shorter here. So yeah, we're at the stage where we're very, very close to having the official plan hopefully finalized. We're having our public meeting next week, and hopefully shortly thereafter we will have council adopt it, and then the process from that point forward is to pass it on to the county, and the county is the actual approval authority, and hopefully they'll make a decision on it hopefully within weeks of it being adopted by local council. So we're getting really close. So yeah, Clint told me, he called me this afternoon. I did know we were going to be discussing this tonight. He had said that, basically you guys may have some questions or some suggestions for me. But we can certainly go through the policies right now that we have. Again, they're all proposed. There's lots of room for adding stuff or bolstering the policies if you see fit. So does everybody, or has everybody seen them? Section 3.43 of the official plan talks about affordability. Okay. So we have a definition of affordable, and that comes, the province has given us that. There's two types of housing, as you're aware, right, in terms of affordable. There's ownership, where you want to buy a house and hopefully it's affordable, and then there's rental, which again, hopefully it's if you're in a certain income bracket. Hopefully there's housing that's considered to be affordable. So with regard to home ownership, as section 343(1) states, affordable housing is housing where the purchase price is at least 10% below the average price of a resale unit in Grey County, or annual household expenses do not exceed 30% of gross household income for low and moderate incomes. And then in the case of rental housing, it's the least expensive of below the average market rent in Grey County, or rent prices do not exceed 30% of gross household income for low and moderate incomes. So I think the first question that somebody would likely ask me is, what is it in Southgate or this part of Grey County for both of those? And to be honest, I don't know. I know a couple of years ago, sort of in the area, it was around, affordable house was around 320,000. It may have been a little bit lower than that in Southgate, in this part. But I don't know what it has been like in the last couple of years. Everything has really shot up, and but I don't know if wages have followed. I'm guessing they haven't. So, but yeah, we do know that the price of housing has gone up substantially. In some cases, I think at least the average house sale in Grey Bruce has almost doubled in 2 years, and that's obviously a big concern. And then with regard to rent, yeah, I don't know what affordable rent would be, but again, I am quite aware that the price of rent has really shot up in the last couple of years. So there's no doubt that in my mind, anyways, I see that gap between the so-called haves and have-nots, unfortunately, seems to be widening, and that's obviously a problem. What we have in the county official plan and in the local official plan, we have policies that encourage affordable housing, both ownership and rental, and we have a policy that recommends a target of 30% of new dwellings to be affordable. A really good question is there teeth there? And if there isn't, how do we get teeth? And generally speaking, in Grey County, we've stayed away from having a requirement for, a developer, if he's putting in 100 homes, that 30 of them have to be affordable, because, well, it's hard to make somebody do that. And then secondly, you may just have some people walk away from developing land because if you're told whatever that number is today, let's say it's 325,000 or 350,000, and you're asking someone to build even a townhouse in that category, that builder would likely lose his or her shirt. I'm assuming that most affordable housing now comes with some subsidization from from some level of government, and it's a really it's sad, but it's tough. What we can do is we try to one of the ways you can make housing more affordable. Maybe if it doesn't fall within the affordable category, it falls in the it's more of a there's no definition of attainable. That's a term that you guys have probably heard lots lately, where it doesn't quote unquote meet affordable, but it is maybe more attainable for people in the low to medium income households, and it would probably be the higher end of the low income, if you will. To do that, you know, we have, you're going to see, if anything, if there's going to be affordable housing, it's going to be that type of housing that falls on smaller lots, like townhouses, where the land is cheaper because you're building on a smaller lot, and you're going to be, and the cost of building a townhouse would be cheaper than, say, a single family dwelling. So there's going to have to be incentives there, like allowing for, again, smaller lots, and maybe in some cases building give consideration of building a bit higher. But again, it's a tough problem to address. There's other things that the township can do. You can consider a request for a grant in lieu of development charges or planning fees and building permit fees in return for a commitment by the developer to meet certain affordability targets. And yeah, I mean, we can give lots of support to groups out there that are trying to establish affordable housing and different initiatives for that. Like I said, through planning, I guess we can offer reduced zoning standards where it's appropriate, of course. And again, that might involve smaller lot areas or frontages, maybe an increased lot coverage. You know, but I think you want to treat that on a site-by-site basis. And yeah, I guess that's essentially what about all I have to say. In our zoning bylaw, I guess another thing we can do, I guess, before I finish here, is you know, we allow for smaller buildings, not just smaller lots, but smaller buildings, as long as it meets the Ontario Building Code for minimum floor area. That should suffice, and that's what most municipalities are doing. They're doing away with minimum floor area requirements for housing, and just let the building code code take care of that. In terms of not necessarily affordable housing, but at least rental housing of some sort, the latest craze, and it's good. A lot of people are taking advantage of this. Is the secondary dwelling unit, and we talked about that before. It can be in one of two forms. It can be within a principal building, or it can be on a secondary. It can be a secondary building on a property. The way the official plan has been written, as per council's instructions, if it's going to be on within a separate building, we'd prefer to see that out in the countryside where the lots are bigger. I like that approach. I'm not convinced that in a small urban area where you have water and sewer that you have enough room on that property to allow for a second structure. But I do very much like the idea of allowing for an apartment building. An apartment within at least a detached dwelling as a means of providing more rental housing. And yeah, I guess that's kind of it for my presentation, folks.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Jerry, you have your hand up.
Ron, thanks for presenting to us tonight. Question about height of buildings. How high could we go conceivably with the official plan in terms of numbers of floors?
That's a very good question. And usually when you get into specifics like that, you leave it up to your zoning bylaw. But one thing the official plan does do on that note, though, is we state in here that maybe we should be identifying, certain areas of, well, it would be just Dundalk, where you would like to see maybe higher buildings as of right. Not necessarily saying you absolutely do that, but anyways, to answer your question, yeah, it's done through the zoning bylaw. Typically, with a single family dwelling or a townhouse or a semi, I believe your zoning bylaw likely reads 10 meters. Yeah, that could be increased. And then with apartment buildings, I'm not sure what that reads. It's probably either a 3 or 4 story maximum building height in your zoning bylaw for apartment buildings.
So the Edgewood Suites is 4 floors. So currently I would assume then that we're 4. What has to happen then? Southgate has to create a bylaw that would allow us to go to 8 floors?
Well, what you would do is, like one of the things you'll be doing probably sooner than later is, now that you're going to have this new official plan done, you'll probably want to next turn to updating your zoning bylaw. And no, that's not me looking for work, but it is something that you'll want to implement. And through that zoning bylaw update, you can just, for example, increase the building height across the board for apartments everywhere, or you could just specifically pick areas of Dundalk, if you choose to do so, like I said, where in that area you would allow for 5, 6, 7, or 8 stories. For what it's worth, Saugeen Shores in the last 6 months, so that's Port Elgin and Southampton, they identified an area pretty much that follows the main strip, so Highway 21, where commercial and residential development can be up to 20 meters in height. And that does away with people when they go to apply to amend the zoning bylaw for themselves to build an apartment building, from the neighbors complaining about the building height. The town took the position that they were so desperate for rental housing that they decided they were going to call a spade and say, we have to build higher, and we're going to do it, within a block of the main strip. And that went through. And now we do have people, or there are people, developers over there that are looking at building 20 meters in height, which is, I think you can get 5 or 6 stories in 20 meters.
So there's a rumor that in the Flado subdivision recently, there was a house, a newly built home sold for $1.2 million. Where does the official plan settle in on inclusionary housing?
Well, it doesn't, and I've had this discussion with the county planners on a couple of occasions, if anybody else is doing it. And it's such a complicated process to require builders to build at a certain price, and then it's not only the builder, but it's the first time owner. You got to make sure that he or she doesn't flip the house, and then the second person doesn't flip the house and go from what is considered to be affordable to not affordable any longer. There are provisions in the that allow for that, but it's a difficult one. There'll be people there that will say that and I'll just play the devil's advocate by making this statement, but some people will argue that maybe it's not fair that the builder has to subsidize someone's housing if the grocery store, these aren't my words, guys, if the grocery store isn't subsidizing that same family with food, and the car dealership isn't subsidizing that same family with their cars, and the oil gas company, so forth and so forth. I understand that argument. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. Should the onus be on the developer to lose money on so many, 30% of his housing or 20% of his housing? Is that his or her responsibility? Your mic's off.
Counselor Shipston, you're muted.
There we go. It looks like Councillor Shipston's having a problem. Jerry, did you have another question?
No.
Okay.
Michael.
Yeah, Michael.
I don't have a question. I'm just telling Martin I can't hear him, just so he gets the message that nobody can hear him.
Yep, I'm not muted,
Okay.
so
We can hear
can
you now.
everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize for that. Ron, the one question that Jerry put forth, whether or not, gas, whatever, you said, these developers are coming in, they do have to look at what is needed in Southgate Township. And whether or not one of their homes that they built a year ago goes for 1.5 million, that does not have anything to do with the developer. What we should ask the developer is to put affordable housing in, the townhomes, the back-to-backs. It is such a hard, like there's so many tendrils going into this. So Jerry, we can't blame a house that Flato built 3 years ago that was bought for 500,000 goes for 1.5. That's the market. We have no control over that. Southgate has no control over that. Even Flato doesn't have any control of that. I would probably like to see him saying, yeah, we sold that house, and if he's a landlord or he owns that, he'd make money. So the point is, we can ask the developer to put more affordable, attainable housing in, like the back-to-back, the townhomes, because we just signed an zoning order. From the initial plan, the only things that were attainable was the lower one, not the northeast and the northwest, north Dundalk. So we do have things to say about development that goes on in here. And Ron, my point is, why can't we say that? Site by site. Jerry asked the question, 4 floors. Why can't you go over 4 floors in town? Well, again, there's all kinds of links. If you have more than 4 stories downtown Dundalk, it might create a havoc for the roads department because there's more ice being built up. Like there's so many things to go on. I would like to see more development going as far as the 4 or 5 stories, perhaps outside Dundalk. And that will come up in part of the agenda now. So it's a hard call, Ron. What would you say about what's going on in Dundalk, or Southgate, not just what the OP is for Grey County?
Yeah. Well, no,
we have stuff to do here.
Yeah. No, it's a problem. I mean, not in Southgate, but I had 2 discussions today with 2 different developers, and I asked them point blank, what are you going to sell your townhouses for? And in both cases, the answer is over $700,000. And because when I represent my clients, I tell them point blank that be it Bruce County or Grey County, that there's a problem here, both in terms of ownership, affordable housing, and just rental housing, and what can we do to help? And it's tough. I mean, the same thing comes up. Like, I mean, they just say they can't build by the definition of affordable. If whatever that number is, 350,000, they will tell you there's no way on this planet they can build for $350,000 or anywhere close to it now. They will lose their shirt. So, you know, but what does that mean then? Does every affordable housing project have to be subsidized somehow? I don't know. That's not necessarily good for our economy if more and more tax dollars are going into offset programs for this. But again, though, I don't know what the solution is. If we're building up, then that and they're going to be not rentals but ownership, so they would have to be condos, because that's the only way you can own an apartment unit. That certainly is going to make it more affordable. Whether or not it's quote unquote affordable, though, I don't know. But I do know, in talking to, you know, I've done this for a while now, in talking to builders, if you can get, let's put it this way, the money is at the 5th and 6th stories, okay, regardless of what you're building. If you build a 3-story home as opposed to a 2-story, but the 3-story doesn't take up as much of a footprint, the costs are lower. So if you can build 6 stories of apartment units as opposed to 4 stories, there's going to be it's more worthwhile for the developer, and his costs will come in cheaper. So there's no doubt about it that building up is a good idea. But again, though, that's only really for apartment buildings, because building up with a single family dwelling, you know, that doesn't really help too much. I guess it's going to be on a slightly smaller lot, but it's a tough one, folks. It really is.
Jerry, go ahead.
I guess the reason I bring up inclusionary housing is a couple of reasons. One, I think, is that if we have clusters of expensive homes, it's harder and harder to get the row housing built into after the fact, as well as apartment buildings. But there's a concern I have a concern that if we don't get busy and get something figured out, the choice of lands that we're going to have for some of these non-profit or lower housing that would cater to people with fewer financial resources are going to be the less desirable spots in town, in the area. And I don't think there's a humanitarian issue with putting housing beside a dump.
Yeah.
No matter how well the dump is run, or how tidy or how clean it is, there is a statement that is being made if we put affordable housing beside some of these situations. And I guess I have one last thought or question, and that is simply, should there be a nonprofit housing corporation developing in Southgate affordable housing, trying to gather affordable housing, would they be treated with the same, would the official plan apply to that nonprofit corporation in the same way as it would to any developer?
Well, the official plan applies to anybody, but the official plan does give, again, right in these policies here, sort of special consideration to people that want to do that. Like, I mean, there's certain incentives that you as the council can give to developers, and you know, we can consider, again, further reduced development standards if it's going to be, again, affordable housing. You can give them the opportunity to waive at least your portion of development charges, planning fees, and you can make it easier for them. Yes, absolutely. The other thing we want to be careful of is making sure that we don't, though, just say, okay, this area of Dundalk or this area of wherever is going to be our area for affordable housing. The term is ghettoizing, and that's the last thing you want to do from a, I guess, for lack of a better term, from a humanitarian perspective. You don't want people going, oh, well, they live in the southeast corner or wherever, and you know, that's just wrong. So efforts should be made to, you know, introduce certain types of housing in different areas, not just one specific area, and integrate them into the community. I've heard some people say some horrible things at public meetings before about those type of people, and it just drives me nuts. I got preachy one night in front of one of the local councils because neighbors stood up and said just some absolutely horrible things about, you know, people that rent, and that's extremely unfair. I used to rent.
Yeah. Well, that is a good point, Ron. I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things in the reports from AMO and the government is try get rid of the NIMBYism in the backyard. And, you know, Jerry mentioned a good point about lands. That stigmata that can come the other side of the tracks. We don't really want to build that, even though there are tracks in Dundalk. We don't want to build that kind of idea. So totally agree with you, Ron. If there's going to be development, it has to be a whole mix. And I believe there is some surplus lands that could make a good mix for rental units, but yeah, we have to look at everything.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think we've, Michael, you
Yep. Thanks, Ron. I think what we need to look at too as a committee now, we know that Grey County is looking at the Rose Lane build. You know, maybe this is the point that we're going to say they're thinking maybe 4 floors. Maybe we think we should maybe take this at this point in the planning stage that we're going to go out for an RFQ on this building. Let's say, you know what, let's go another couple floors higher. If, you know, the cost is at that point that we can get another 2 floors on this building where it's located down in there, like maybe this is the time that we should be doing that. And then my other question is single family dwellings. At what point is a house classified as a single family when you have 2 generations living in a house? Is that still classified as a single dwelling, family dwelling?
So good question. And for just so you know, we don't use that term anymore. And we use the term detached dwelling. And I probably haven't, if I have ever said single family, I have said that in error. In the last 10, 15 years, they've been known as detached dwelling because, to answer your question, the provincial government, I think it went to a court of law, ruled that you don't have, family has nothing to do with who lives in the house. You can have, you know, 8 different unrelated people. They don't have to be a family. So family has nothing to do with it. So when is a detached dwelling a detached dwelling? If that's the real question, it's where you have typically, you know, 1 kitchen and, you know, pick a number. I mean, you could have 15 bathrooms and it's still a detached dwelling. But that's the terminology we use. And we do not attempt to control the number of unrelated people that live in a house. When it becomes something else is if there's a self-contained unit, like in the basement, for example, if there's a full suite down there and they have a locked door and they have access to that suite from the outside, that's typically when you have what you call a secondary dwelling or an apartment. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
I want to follow up to that. So understandable, but where do we come as residents and councilors? How do we go in and inspect these houses unless someone comes forward and says that this is a, you know, another house in the basement? They've created a granny suite with, you know, with everything down there tax dollar wise. How do we capitalize on these?
Well, they're supposed to have building permits. I mean, if I took my house here and I'm in my basement now, and if I turn this into, I couldn't because I don't have another means of access down here, but if I could, I do need the necessary building permits. But I can assure you that that is a huge issue across Ontario. There are so many basement apartments that the city, the town, the township, municipality do not know about. It's just, I don't know if it's a problem. It is in the sense that if it doesn't meet building code, like for example, I couldn't put apartment down here because my windows are up at my head level. So there's no means of getting anybody out of here in a safe manner should there be a fire. And having said that, I'm guessing there's, in Owen Sound here alone, there's probably hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that have an apartment in their basement and they don't meet the fire code.
Yeah. Well, I will add to that, Ron. There's so many gray areas when it comes into secondary units. You know, the builder and the building inspector can go into a basement that's not yet finished, and there'll be the pipes up for a nice bathroom downstairs. So, oh, we're going to build a bathroom. 4 years later, he'll build a bathroom and somebody's living there not legally entitled to be there. So as far as bylaws and what have you. So perhaps putting that in the official plan would make people at least aware that, you know, the county and the township is looking at that kind of stuff and saying, you know, you got to do it right. You know, again, bylaws are bylaws. You know, you're going to get caught out eventually.
Yeah.
So it's a gray area. It is such a gray area.
The one thing I will say, this is kind of encouraging. Again, I have spoken with a lot of builders and I speak with a lot of developers, including one today, and he builds several homes a year, and he says it's surprising how many people want to have a secondary dwelling unit in their basement. In fact, maybe the word want should be substituted with the word have to have a secondary dwelling unit in the basement. If I'm building now $1 million home in Dundalk, I can't afford that. And I asked a question today, this fits in perfectly. I asked the builder, is it $35,000 or $40,000 to take basically instead of a finished basement as a basement, make it an apartment? So you're adding in a kitchen and an extra bathroom. He said about $40,000. But think about it, divide monthly rent into $40,000 and that's paid for what, in 3 years maybe? After that, that's a nice income that homeowner can use to help pay the mortgage. So in a way, you're not only adding rental housing, but you're making that house a little bit more affordable for the person that owns it. I'm stating the obvious, but but my point is more and more people are doing this because they have to, and it's a good thing they have to, I guess, because now we're getting some additional rental housing.
Well, that is an interesting side view. I'm going to be the devil's advocate, Ron, and say these guys who are building the $1 million homes and they're putting these things in, why would they have to worry about having somebody come in and do the rent? You know, I work with builders and I have heard that also. So, and there's the other flip side of the coin too.
Martin,
a lot of builders don't want to get involved in that kind of stuff. So anyway, we can call in a question. Any more?
Muriel has a question,
John?
I think, John.
Oh,
Yeah.
John? Yeah,
Muriel?
go ahead, John.
Yeah, thank you.
And then Muriel?
I just wanted to ask Ron's opinion of community land trusts and the possibility of rent to own programs.
And pardon my ignorance, what is the land trust?
Okay. Oh, well, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot happening in Canada. It seems to be bigger in the States maybe, but I'll just read out a definition that I have here. It's a nonprofit land ownership model that creates and preserves affordable community-owned housing. They provide a legal mechanism to hold land in trust for the purpose of creating housing so that it remains permanently affordable. People access the housing through a long-term lease, plus the value of the housing. Price controls, which are typically tied to inflation, are built into the model to keep the housing affordable at resale.
So that sounds like, yeah, I've never heard of that before. It sounds like it's similar to a life lease arrangement, but I don't know. I don't know if life lease ends up being affordable. My off the cuff comment would be that would be great if you can find a willing party to do that.
Yes, like we would have to find land that's either already available somehow or another, already owned publicly perhaps, or raise the money for it and then developer build the houses as usual, presumably on it, or rental building.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyways, there are some different ones. I actually had included projects that I found out about in my report for tonight, so I will be sending that around at some point too, as well as we'll talk about it later.
Okay. Thank you, Muriel. John, you had an opinion?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I wanted to add in on this. This is a bigger discussion all around. Most basements, when they build the secondary unit down there, don't have the secondary means of egress. I would say over 3/4 of the people I pulled out of fires over the 30 odd years I was down there, 3/4 or more were out of basement apartments or that only had the one way out, and the windows weren't big enough or they were a little bigger, but they were in a window well or something was blocking them. And so it's for the fire service, it's a big deal. The other thing is once you hit 5 stories, it changes things for firefighting. And you need a lot more firefighters on the scene a lot faster to handle a high-rise fire. And so there's or any type of emergency in there. And I'm talking, starting off with at least 20 firefighters on scene. So as well as there's a lot of the departments think that once you get over 5 stories, you're going to need an aerial. And there's different thoughts on that. And that's a $1.2 million truck. So just from the fire side, let alone from any of the other things, there's a lot to be considered with going very much higher. And the basement apartments are a great idea, but they've got to have a way out. And not a lot that I saw did. So just my 2 cents.
Yep. Actually, I'll speak to that, Dave, then you can have your hand up. I totally agree with that, John, because a lot of the buildings I go into, when I paint basements, the egress from the basement windows, I am getting a little bit broader in the belly, but even when I was younger, I could not get out of that window. And a lot of the new builds, they're coming back at least 2 feet around the basement windows. So that egress is a big thing. So maybe that should be something put into the official plan. If you're going to be doing this, make sure all the windows are accessible. And a good point, John, about the higher cost, because it all is connected to the municipality for cost about going up higher. I never did think about that, so thank you for that. Dave, go ahead.
And the basement window, if I could just add on, is only good for somebody fit enough to climb out a basement window. It's not like a 4-story window that somebody can fall out of, like me right now with my knees and everything. I don't know if I can get out a basement window.
Me as well. That was a good point to bring up, though. That should be something addressed with the policies from the government about having access to different things. That has to be maybe a change of building code. although it probably has, but we're looking at other older buildings. So Dave, go ahead. Sorry about that, sir.
Yeah, no, not a problem. So Ron, now that we have you here, I've talked to the county about, rural developments for because the big cost of any development in urban area is the cost of the land and then the cost of servicing, development charges, all that stuff that comes online. But is there a way to change policies or look at these? Because I've got people that would literally turn a gravel pit into a nice development because there's water, put a road around the outside of this pit. But when it comes to the servicing and the transit side, the county just seemed to put their hands up, and that's the way the policies are. But if we're going to create some of this affordable housing, tiny home developments with a shared lot and servicing, that's the big cost. And do you see policy change at the higher levels to maybe accommodate that?
Yeah. So, Dave, are you really asking? Is there an opportunity to go back to where we were in 2012, where the county official plan allowed for rural subdivisions?
Well, and I guess rural subdivisions within the proper context. I'm not saying, these 2-acre lots and $2 million homes. I'm saying smaller lots with shared servicing and more of a mobile home type park that can be starter home type model, that type of thing. I mean, these tiny homes, we keep talking about them, but where are we going to put them? There's got to be a place. And like you say, like people in town don't want to live beside those. But I think, we've talked about a few back-to-back condos being inserted into the middle of a subdivision, maybe 8, 10, 12 units, that those people can integrate and be there. But there's still a lot of people that need that start to, lease the land, own the home on top of it, whether it's a trailer mobile unit, these modular homes are coming online. We've got 2 people that's looking to do those type of construction builds in warehouse or in manufacturing facilities and then move them out and set them up. But we got no place to put them.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Yeah, and you answered my question with you're talking about rural subdivisions because they get scooped up quickly by people that want to build a $2 million home. So, because in the rural subdivisions, you have to demonstrate, that the site conditions are suitable for septic and a well. So what that means is the engineer is going to tell you that the lots have to be anywhere from 3/4 of an acre to an acre in size. And all of a sudden, that's not affordable at all. You've just gone in the exact opposite direction that you want to go in. So then I see your question. It's then, okay, forget that, but still out probably in the rural areas, or maybe some of the smaller communities that aren't serviced, allowing for an opportunity like that. And I would say it's easier to do something like that in the settlement areas as opposed to out in the countryside. If we're going to encourage it in the country, then we're going to have to certainly tell the county to change their own policies, because right now the county official plan wouldn't allow for a development of that nature outside of designated urban centers.
So there is one seemingly proceeding, and he's going on the idea of it being a trailer, like I shouldn't say trailer, but a mobile home type park or modular home type park. He would provide the water and a sewer collection system, and there's treatment systems out there. There's technologies to look after these kind of things, but he seems to be making headway with his planner and his engineers to do this. But how's he doing it? He hasn't got there yet, but
where would that be?
It's actually in Southgate. It's was a former, I would call it campground type of a facility, and he's talking about converting it to this this style of modular home and mobile home type park setup.
I think there's no doubt that that form of living is probably the only way some people are ever going to be able to own something. Well, I guess in this case, they're not owning I guess would they be renting, or would they rent, they'd own the building and rent the land?
Correct. It's like a land lease with the land servicing there to accommodate that. And if they want to take their unit, they can move it and go elsewhere or sell it, that sort of thing.
And you know what, we may find that in the future, that's the only way that a lot of people can afford to buy something, is in that arrangement.
Yeah, like it appears that they could get in at 150 to 300,000, depending on how elaborate they want to be, and then have that land servicing available to them for, like whatever, $400 a month. But at least they're getting a foot on the ground and getting a start.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't want to take up a lot more time, but I think that's a vehicle we got to look for in the future to really create change in this area.
Well, I think the whole point, sorry to interject, I think the whole point of the policies from AMO, it's all talk about partnership, and we have to think about outside the box. I've worked for clients who had mobile homes, trailers, whatever you want, and they sold it for a profit and built their own house. I think 2 years ago, Ron, you could look into this. I think Kitchener-Waterloo actually had a bylaw passed that they would allow tiny homes in town. I don't know how the heck that would work, but if there's land available for people or private owners that want to, would tiny homes on a 2-acre lot or 5-acre lot with just a well, especially when these tiny homes do their own composting, would that be something in the official plan? Would that be a gray area as well?
So are these, would these be existing lots, or are we talking about creating a bunch of lots?
If somebody in the country had 5 lots, I'm not talking Kitchener now, because I was amazed that they would allow tiny homes in Kitchener, like in the settlement boundaries. But if somebody, like the person that Dave was mentioning, if they had some land, they didn't want to go with a full septic, but they had people interested in just setting up camp. And there was a shared, it's amazing with all the talks about the 70-foot high rises, we're also talking about freaking communes coming back into place. It's just amazing how the wheel turns. Is that allowable in official plans, to have somebody saying, hey, sit on my land and I supply the water and you can do your composting toilet? Like, is that part of the official plan? Not that I would want to do that, but the times are changing. A lot of people are going backwards. Well, I shouldn't say backwards, but a lot of people are looking at different lifestyles. Is that involved in the Grey County plan?
So I guess if you're looking at one of those on a property, or if there's a house on the property already and adding one of these, the official plan does speak to a secondary dwelling as a standalone structure. And we'll make sure that in your new zoning bylaw, or you should make sure in your new zoning bylaw when you do it, that there is not a building floor area requirement other than what the building code requires, which apparently is about 300 square feet. I don't know if that meets the definition of tiny home or not. But look, if the question is, can you have a whole bunch of these on one property under the current policies?
Yeah.
Official plan? No.
And no, even if they're doing their own waste, they don't have to do the septic, but they have a shared well?
Correct. And like, so under the current county under the current county official plan, it doesn't consider that. Could it be changed? Yes. And we have to follow, we can't be more permissive than the county official plan, as you've heard me say before, but we can be more restrictive. So if the county amends their official plan someday just to allow for, you know, a series of tiny homes on one property, then we'll be able to change, or Southgate will be able to change its official plan to reflect that.
Yeah,
So,
okay. So with planning, there's a lot of gray areas. So this, if a person wanted to do that, he could go for an amendment to Grey County.
They
So it could still be possible.
Absolutely. You could do that.
Okay,
Or-
no, that's,
Yep.
okay. Dave, go ahead.
well, just on that, Ron. So if let's say Martin and I bought a piece of land, could I build a 500 square foot tiny home, and he build a 500 square foot tiny home as a secondary unit on the property, and 2 units? Would that fit?
If it doesn't fit, Dave, your zoning bylaw now, it should very shortly once you change your zoning bylaw.
Okay, okay.
So just to be clear,
Could-
you don't want to have, like, almost every bylaw in Gray and Bruce up until a couple years ago said you have to have at least 1,000 square feet of floor area to build a house.
Right.
Most municipalities have, or some of them anyways, nope, it's not a provision in the bylaw. There's not a minimum floor area requirement. You just speak with the building official. The building official will say, well, you need so much room for a bathroom, so much room for a sort of a kitchen area, and you need so much other habitable space, and they'll tell you it's about 300 square feet.
Yeah.
And so then what'll happen is then in your zoning bylaw, you should also allow for a second dwelling unit. So yes, you should be able to put on out in the countryside anyways, anywhere on any property, 2 detached dwellings.
Yeah, okay, so, but not a third is what I'm hearing.
Yep.
But with that said, like, you know, we have a lot of these, you've heard the term checkerboard lots, which are varying sizes. Some are 5 acres even. So there's lots of land to put a system in place that could be shared, because I think we can have people use like 4 or 5 houses on one well. That's kind of a maximum for the province. Is that not true?
Yeah, there's the province kind of, once you hit over 5, the general rule of thumb is the municipality is supposed to assume ownership of that water.
Yeah.
That water system. And that's not something you typically want to do nowadays.
No, but I think there is a number, and I forget whether it's 4 or 5 is the maximum threshold. But I mean, with these checkerboard lots, they're not being developed either because the cost of putting a road back to them or whatever. But anyway, that's a whole other subject. Thank you for your answers on that.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Michael, did you have your hand up? I think we have to cut this.
One more question. I'm just kind of curious when he said about the wells. I'm just kind of wondering, how does a place like Pike Lake over there, when they have the seasonal at the back, or I mean, residential's at the back of that place. I mean, it's out in the country, and then seasonal at the front. I mean, so that means the township is actually inspecting the water at a place like that?
No.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening there. I do know with new developments in the last, I don't know, pick a number, 20 years, the general rule of thumb is if you're having a communal water system or a communal septic system, where you have different owners, but they're sharing a system, usually the municipality takes it over. There's just a little bit more, I guess, faith in the system that things are going to continue to go right if, and nobody gets sick, I guess, especially with the water systems, if it's owned by the municipality. And in this post-Walkerton era that we live in, most municipalities don't want to touch a communal water system with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah. Why should they? Okay, do you have a follow-up, Michael? You're good? Okay, thank you, Ron. I think if there's no other questions, we will move on back to 7.1, and that is Southgate Attainable Housing Task Force. So we'll go from there.
Okay, so you want me to present on that, Martin, then? The results?
Yeah, just for a second. And if
Okay,
I may
good.
ask Jerry, take over for 2 seconds. I have apologize, I've got a call I have to do. So, thank you.
So
Yep, go
maybe
ahead.
I'll hit. Okay, and I want to thank Ron for spending the time with us tonight. That was a really good discussion. So I want to take you to the documents in the agenda, and there's basically 3 pages, and I want to let you know what my rankings were. How did I come up with these numbers? But if you provided me responses, and I believe there was in total 4 responses received that went in. Yes, 4 responses were received to create these results. If you give it a 1 or a 10, I put that number in there for that line item and added those numbers up. If you give me no response, I give those line items an 11. And 4 people responded, and then I got a 5th one after the agenda was published, and I can share with you that information. So instead of a 44 at the end, some of them now have 55, which is 11 times 5, and nobody give them any kind of rankings. But what I will share with you is the top 7 in the agenda are still the top 7. There was a little bit of shuffling, and I'll share that with you with the 5th set of rankings that I got. So basically, number 1 and 2B, they still stayed at the top. The only thing that shifted was 2B became the number 1, and number 1 became 2, and the only difference was 18 points to 22 points. But I think it's irrelevant. I still think the top 7, and I'll give you the order. So it's 2B, 1, 2A, which was 3, and then it went down to number 10, jumped up, and number 5 is 4 is now 5, or sorry, 22 is ranked 5, 17 is ranked 6, and then number 6 is ranked 7. So basically apply a housing first policy to work with the developers of privately owned property, and then conduct a community survey as number 2. Apply a housing first policy to municipally owned surplus land. And then number 4 is update the official planning and zoning bylaw to accommodate additional residential units. So we're partway there. I think we need to push that zoning side, and then investigate the merits of forming an attainable housing development corporation, which we've talked a lot about, and I think that's a really important strategy. Consider reducing or waiving development charges. That's a discussion between this group and council, and that's a really important thing. If we're going to really create affordability, we drop off that $20,000 or $25,000 in development charges, and when we renew the development charges this year, that may increase even to $30,000. And then number 7 is ranking is number 6, which is explore the existing planning policy framework and zoning bylaw, which is much the same as number 10, which was ranked 4th. So I think those are the top 7 that we really need to focus on and create some leadership on and making change there. And like Jerry asked for, if we want to discuss more of the survey, that maybe now's the time to do that, or we could do it for new business.
Well, my comment will be fairly short. Martin had put together a draft a few weeks ago, and I had forwarded it to Jennifer de Jong, who her area of interest was going to be public education. And so I haven't been able to connect with Jennifer to see where the survey is. I know that there was an offer that the staff of Southgate could perhaps put together a survey. But I think collectively now, I think the reason I wanted to bring up the survey was I suspected it was going to be fairly high among, because we've had a lot of conversation about it over the last few months. It's just to get it going, and let's get it out there, and let's see what the public are saying. The only additional comment I had would be is that we not forget the people that are also involved in this outside of this group of 7, plus our planners and our building officials and our CAOs and our Hollies. We need to keep in mind that Joan John from the Junction, Jeff Van Jeem, and Crystal Ferguson from the Community Health Center, as well as people representing Canadian Mental Health Services in the area, are all involved in this in some way, either directly or indirectly. And so we don't miss an opportunity to send the survey, once prepared, through those folks to get to the people that will have answers that will be of value to us when it's all compiled.
So, Jerry, from a staff perspective, it's difficult to get progress on that type of an issue at these meetings. Could we charge you to work with the person that's got the survey? Who was that now? Sorry, I missed that.
Jennifer has been working on it with input from Muriel and Martin.
Okay, well, if the 4 of you could kind of get it finalized offline, just on rough notes, we could then put a version together to come to the next meeting and get it approved and get it out there. And we can get it to people. We could put it on our website. We could put it out there through SurveyMonkey. I mean, however you want to do it. But I think that would be, if we could put some draft together, bring it back to this committee for ratification, and then let's get it out there.
Okay, I will take the lead then to coordinate with the other 3 individuals.
Okay.
But an open invitation to anyone else, any other committee member, actually anyone else listening in, if you've got any thoughts about survey questions or ideas, we're still at the point where we would welcome those. But I will work towards getting that ready in the next 2 weeks. And
yeah, and then
Holly?
Yeah, that would be good. Holly and I can banter it around. She'll do the heavy lifting most likely. Thank you for that, Holly. But anyway, and then maybe we can get it out in the agenda or even earlier for some comments from all committee members and get that feedback and try and get something really solid, or get something that is draft and we add a few things to, and that be ratified, and then we can get it out there. And we can put it out there, get the feedback, and then we can reissue it again in a few months in a different format or however you like. But let's take a stab at it and get that feedback.
I just wanted to add that when we all look at the survey, when something comes out, and hopefully if we're having more input into it, that we look at it from an education perspective for the public, that it's not just to get what they think now, but it's also to encourage them to think more openly about other kinds of housing, people who need housing, and not so that we're creating yes in my backyard rather than not.
Okay, I'll work on that over this next 2 weeks then, and try to, does that meet a timeline for you, Holly, if I had it to you in 2 weeks? That'd be okay?
Yeah, I would need it the end of the week of April 15th, in and around there.
Okay. Okay, I'll work towards that. I'll be in touch with you, you other folks then. Thank you.
Maybe what I'll throw back out there, the other 6 items, maybe we'll put those as discussion items for the next council meeting, or sorry, the next committee meeting, and seek some direction as to, how are we going to proceed? Are these things that can be just, a motion passed and we deal with council? I would think number 17, which was ranked 6 now, is considered reducing or waiving development charges. That should be something we take to council at the Affordable Attainable Housing Committee report, maybe in June or July. So if it's okay with the committee, we'd put those other 6 items on the agenda for discussion in greater detail at the next meeting, if that makes sense.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Can we get an up-to-date, an updated chart then, or the priorities?
Yes. Yeah, I can do that. You won't like what you won't like what I've got here, but anyway, I will update it and get that back out to you. Do you want the top 10, or would you like them all? I mean, I'll just redo it, and we'll deal with I think for now we'll just deal with the top 7, because they seem to, they're fairly close. Once you jump over 7, it takes quite a little jump there. Doesn't mean that in 6
Okay,
months
can everybody,
or 3 months we can't come back and take a look at everything below 7. They're likely good priorities, but let's take a run at the heavy ones right now.
can anybody hear me? It's Martin here.
I can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay. I'm having problems here. With the survey, there was obviously more people putting stuff in. With regards to DC charges, Dave, is there any leniency when it comes to DC charges for somebody coming to the township saying, I want to do this affordable housing? Would you waive me or take 50% off? Like, is there that kind of leeway with DC charges, even though the DC charges are coming up?
Yeah, so the way the bylaw
with the
works right
changes?
now, is if we were to go to council and say, we want to waive those DCs on something, those DCs have to be replenished from taxpayer dollars. So if we say, if we forgive $20,000 in DCs, we got to go to the tax base, pull $20,000 out of the levy and shove that into the DC, because we can't forgive them. But something we'll have a discussion on in our new development charges bylaw, which will be put in before the end of the year, is that development charges could be waived by council approving a certain project and not be charged to the tax levy. So affordable housing projects that have a certain criteria could be exempt.
Yeah, and when it comes to a lot of affordable housing projects, they're with partners anyway, right? So
Well,
that
we would
money
hope
could
so,
be,
yes.
you would hope so. Okay, no, that's good. Thank you, Jerry, for taking over. So any more questions on this one? And Jerry, Dave, you said you'd be putting out the first top 10?
Well, I'll just
On the-
redo the whole, I'll do the rankings on the whole thing. The ones that got
Okay.
55 and the ones that got, I think 18 was number 1. So we'll re-rank them and put the numbers there so everybody can see it. And then I think for now, we'll try and work on those top 7, and we'll bring those back to the next meeting.
Okay. Well, I think it's a good thing to have that, because the survey I sent to Jerry was very holistic. It was not as defined as what this survey is. So between what I put to Jerry and he passed it on, it was more like, what do you want in your community? The survey from the task force is like, definitely what do you want. So I think there has to be a correlation between the two. Mine was not as detailed, but I think that would be a good thing to combine them. So thank you, Jerry, for passing that on anyway, but we'll go from there. So any more discussion on the 7.1? Hearing none, we'll move on to 7.2, possible surplus lands. Dave, is Clint there to talk about this, or are you going to take this one on too?
No, yeah, I'll take this one on too. Clint wasn't able to attend. So
Yep.
what I did was I went into our system and we had some people do some searches for in the tax system of lands that we own as a municipality. And what I was able to come up with is in the agenda, and it
Yep.
is after the, and I don't have the page numbers, I apologize. I'm just going to scroll to it right now. But anyway, it's the, here we are. So it starts at, I'm wrong. I'm not in the right place somehow. Here we are.
10 of 8, 87.
Yeah, okay, so here we are, 10 of 8. So that first,
87.
oops, I got to go further back. Okay. So I believe it's page 8 in the agenda is the first one. And oh, this is, they're kind of out of order and I apologize, but I wanted to deal with the urban ones first. But this is the Drumore
Yep.
Park, and there's
Sorry
significant
about
land there. You can see the roadway in at the top is Road 22, and the roadway on the left side is County Road 23. So there is an entrance there, but we don't really have that utilized. But the entrance off 22 goes back, and there's parkland there in front. But this is a parcel of 6.64 acres, so it's a fairly sizable parcel. And in my mind, if you could cut a line across that roadway, there's land in there that's surplus. But like, that's why I was asking the questions of Ron. You know, these rural subdivisions, if that's what that is, you know, we really can't do that. But can we, you know, talk to the county planners about that as being affordable housing complex for a multiple unit development, that the township retains the land and we do, I don't know. But anyway, that's a lot. I guess all I'm really doing is showing you some properties that we have in the township. Like, again, the problem with this one is it's in the urban or the rural area. The next one is, okay, this one's in the urban area, and that racetrack that you see is actually the Ganelg subdivision. So this is off of Ganelg Street, and this land that is shown in the kind of that bluish aqua blue color is land that has been designated as undevelopable as part of the project. Now the back part is wet, but there is a house on the property at the front corner that was built there. So I've asked our planners, and I haven't got an answer yet because it's just done recently, but we're looking into if this front treat area could be developed as developable land, and have an organization like, because there's definitely, let me just, this parcel is, oh, it says no acreage provided, but I think there is an acreage there. And I don't have it handy. Anyway, it's a significant parcel of land. It must be 5 or 6 or more than 5 or 6 acres. But that's a possibility at the front for an urban developable affordable housing complex.
Yeah.
Possibly,
yeah.
if it's not too consumed with wetland.
Yeah.
The next one is This is 0.7 acres. Now, this is Hopeful Ballpark. Now that land couldn't be developed, but it's all, I just wanted to show you all of the, that's the baseball diamond. This is the front part. And so this is the diamond to the to the west of the property.
Yep.
And there is some land here that maybe could be developed for that type of thing. But again, not as good as Drumore, and it is in the rural area.
Where you've got the green there, that's the wrong part. That's the main diamond. That's the outfield of the main diamond where you've got highlighted.
No. So are you looking at page 11?
I'm looking at
Yeah,
this
the
7.2.
Yeah, so the last one was page 10, and that is the outfield. That's the one I said no, that couldn't be used. Go to the next page, and it's the part of the lower diamond, and then it's the frontage onto County Road 9, and some of that treed area. Now it's wetland down there a bit, but you know it could be built up or something. But again, it's an urban one. It's a tough one. If you go to the next one, where the heck is this one now? Assembly Hall, Community Hall.
Certain part.
No, it's not. I thought it wasn't first looking at it, but it shouldn't be. I think it is. I think it's part of this one as well in Hopeville. Because there's about
Yeah, it
3 or
says
4. Okay, yeah. That's up
Road
in this
9.
area. So go to page 13. And that's the back end of that. So I mean, with these lot lines could be changed, but it takes part of that lower diamond and then the treat area. This is actually pretty good property, the most westerly. It comes up a little bit higher, but again, it's rural. What can be done with it? And there's another section of it, but that's the main diamond itself, and so on. That's page 14. If we go to 15, now 15 is page 15 in your agenda is 5.39 acres. It is a fairly sizable property that is taking in the entrance to the Dundalk transfer station. But I'm looking at kind of that parcel where it's treed over in the far corner. We have some staff or public works are looking into, you know, the distance setback from the transfer station, because there are houses that are actually closer or as close to this as from over at the top than this area here. So I don't know. We'll get an answer there, but really what I'm showing tonight is the parcels that we have available that are. Here's an interesting one. Go ahead.
That parcel there could work if we decided to move the transfer station from that location, which wouldn't be that hard to move that location, because there's not a lot there. We're wanting to expand it anyway. We got property coming up in the new eco park and stuff like that. So to relocate that transfer station, to make that, you know, because you're going to hook onto town water and sewers there anyway, that we could make that green space all back there.
Yeah.
I mean, we could
so
revitalize that section of Dundalk.
To build that infrastructure. To build that infrastructure that's at that transfer station, you'd be looking at $1 million. Like it's not cheap. I mean, I think we put, when we did it in 2000 and I'm going to say 2002 or 3, we likely put $250,000 or more into it then for the sawtooth and all that. But if you're doing a new one, it would be a bit more elaborate with cement walls and so on. But it would be $1 million. You'd be better just go buy another piece of land somewhere for $1 million and plunk a development on it.
And
go ahead.
Martin here. We are looking at municipal land. Mainly one of the reasons why is because we have that asset that we can give to builders. We're looking at Flato coming in over the next 30 years building houses, but Jerry will agree with me on this. We want something done in the next 2 or 3 years, and we have access land. So I'm looking at this one with the transfer station now. Michael, Jerry, those guys we talked to on that Saturday morning only needed 2 acres to build a fairly good home or apartment building. So looking at that map, yes, it is in there is green space there, and there's trees. Depending on the cutbacks from where the transfer station is, it's onto municipal roads. This would be one, if any, that I would say, yeah, look into severing 2 acres and giving it to a builder.
So
Because
let
it
me
is
just come back.
water mains.
Let me come back to
Go
that
ahead,
discussion.
Dave. Yeah.
The big thing is we got to see if we can get a parcel off on the kind of that southerly and easterly corner. And even if it was like half an acre, 3/4 an acre to do one of those Wilson developments, is that boundary of that lot going to be set back far enough from the transfer station like some of the other properties around? I don't know.
No,
that's something we're investigating. I think the most,
that's what I say.
Yeah, the 3 most interesting parcels are the one, and I'll take you back to, I think Hopeful Ballpark is really tough.
Yeah.
The Hopeful Ballpark's really tough, but I want to go back to this one on page, on page, and I'm trying to get the page number.
Proton Station.
Well, Ganelga's the best because it's in the urban footprint. If it works and we'll find out in the next 30 days, I'm hoping, as to is there a building envelope of an acre or 2 there? If it is, it's in the urban footprint. It's got services. Bang, way we go. The Proton Station, I think, and Drumore, I agree with you, Councillor Shearson, is the Proton Station one is likely really good, and I'm gonna, if I can find it in the agenda here.
We could build 2 buildings out there on the property, and
well, yes, you could.
To keep the playground out front.
Well, you could actually, I think what you could do is you can still have the playground severed, and you could create a bunch of lots along, say, Road 73, which is at the bottom there, and kind of intersects from a north-south on an angle towards the west. But you could create lots. You could put a road in with a cul-de-sac and put a bunch of tiny homes. But again, the problem with this is that's why I asked Ron. This is a rural subdivision. So unless I think what we need to do as a committee, and I guess I can say this as I retire, but I think we need to go to council and say we need to beat somebody up to develop these kind of things. Put a roadway in there with a little cul-de-sac, and let's put a bunch of tiny homes or 500,000 square foot homes, and get the planners, lobby the planners at the county to accommodate this kind of thing. If we're going to find $350,000 affordable homes for these people, or $2 or $250, I don't know. But and the same thing with Drumore is another option, but these urban ones are really, really tough. As Ron said, they don't want to dial it back to 2012 with rural subdivisions.
But on this one here,
go ahead, Mike.
Building like over in Durham that Wilson's and Can Do built over there, on property like this, you only have one well needed for the whole building and one septic system for the whole building. So in a case like this, we could go bigger. We still could do a 20-year deal or something like that on a piece of property like this in the country. We got room for parking, snow removal, everything out there. I don't know why it wouldn't work. Why wouldn't people want to live out there in a residential, like out in a community like that versus in town?
I don't think it's a matter of living. I think, when it comes to the county planning, a multi-residential unit, whether, let's say, a 3-story walk-up that would be affordable, like what Wilson may build, will they allow you to put a super septic systems on that with one well to service that, or does the water need to be tested and all that good stuff, which is likely the case. And if, for one of these, like, I don't know. Well, we'd have to find out.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of these properties it's good to have in the back of our heads. The Drumore one with the 2 access roads of the old roads, looking 20 years ahead, there's a couple of apartment buildings there. And I know, like I said, Dave, this is one of the hardest committees that you've probably ever been part of. And I know it's certainly one of the hardest I've ever been involved in, because there's so many gray areas. Why build a 3 or 4 multi-level unit out in the country when people who want to use that don't have cars? That is the problem of Southgate Housing Committee.
Well,
but looking at Drumore, though, with the 2 access roads and that little block, why not eventually, why not a couple of blocks of 3 or 4 level apartments there? The one you mentioned, I think it was just off Main Street there, across from Ida, that little green spot. You really can't touch all that other spot, but why not in that little green area next to that house, put up another affordable housing? Because I think Jerry and I agree on this. Like, we have developers coming in and doing the big dreams of 20-year plans, but the Affordable Housing Committee is, let's try and get something in the ground for 3 years or 4 years from now. So we have places for the workers who are going to be coming into all the new buildings in the eco park. Greenlee, 100 people in the next 3 years. So
I'm wondering if we could, at this point, like, this could be a conversation that continue through the night. If we could just
yes, it could
reserve these, if we could just reserve these properties and just have an understanding with council that we don't do anything with these properties until we figure out what it is we would like to do.
Yep.
There's potential here,
point,
and that's
Gary.
more than we had. That's more than we had
Before.
like in other meetings where we're trying to understand where there might be land. The next steps, I think we need to figure out what the next steps are in terms of who approaches the Wilson Corp people then, and other builders who might be interested, and how do we sort of get them looking at these properties and telling us whether they would even be interested in them. But I do think as well that we need to be doing something in less than 4 years. Like, the sooner the better that something gets started.
So
Anyway,
to put a bow on this discussion and finish it off, what we'll do is staff will investigate the capability of the Ida Street and Gnaug properties, because for the big win, early win, would be those 2 properties if they could be developed. And we'll kind of put the Drumore and Drumore and the Proton Station properties on kind of hold. None of them are going to be sold, so they are on hold. Kind of let's talk that way. And then when we go to report to council, I think we ask council to put those properties on the sidelines until we really figure out from a planning perspective for the rural ones what can be done. But the urban ones, there's no planning issues except for the wetland. Is it or isn't it on Gnaug? One, the setback from the landfill is the big one on Ida Street. So we'll get that information for the next meeting to kind of move the line a bit further down on that decision.
Okay.
now,
Well,
Wilson,
appreciate everything the staff's done. Jerry, go ahead.
just that Wilson Corp, based on the meeting we had with them a few weeks ago, like, they're ready to go. They want to build 2 buildings a year. That's their business plan. If they don't build for us, they'll build for somebody else.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of like this is something that if there's any chance we could sort of make a commitment to them, if everyone agrees that they're going to be a good partner, it needs to happen fairly, like sooner rather than later, I would say. But Muriel, you had something?
I was just going to ask
Yeah.
whether Southgate ever acquires what had been private properties through unpaid property taxes.
That so that process is very, very competitive now because of the land values have gone up. There's very few properties that don't get bids of some kind and significant bids. The only time that you don't get bids is when nobody else wants it either. Like there is a couple properties that are wetland, and we just don't
And
get bids. We'd love somebody to bid on them, but there's no building envelope.
are you, do you have to take bids on it? Or
So
could you save it for and do something with it?
Yeah, no, we have to by law. I've asked that question. We have
Okay.
to by law get the most money we can for it because
Oh.
the money needs to be to pay the taxes. And if there's money after the taxes, which there is in this day and age, that has to then go back to the property owner to compensate them for their losses. But
Oh.
years ago, there's no doubt that sometimes you would just get the taxes or whatever, and people weren't that familiar with the process. But now it's not. We got a bid. I think we got 15 bids in a property here last year that just went crazy for the price. The property wasn't even worth that. But that's just our opinion.
Okay.
Yep.
It's got to go
Okay.
through it.
Well, yeah, that's right. Okay, well, he's getting on time. We'll move to, thanks for the discussion, guys. It was good to hear that. And thank you for the staff of Grey County and our planning department to put those places. As Jerry said, it is good to actually see that we have not just useless properties as surplus, but properties that could be developed, not just in the next 2 or 3 years, but in the next 20 as well, especially Drumore, because things will change for sure. So we'll go to 8.1, committee members' area of interest. Jerry, put that email out to everyone. We can certainly start off. I'll start off by saying I was looking after the developers. Obviously, through council, we've talked to Flato with the zoning orders, and I have talked to other developers through emails for the larger ones, or semi-large, and the contractors I worked for, and the main issues to them was land, obviously. Would they want to be interested in doing residential units? Yes, they have manpower, but their question was, who do I partner with? I don't mind building it, but I don't want to look after the rental. So again, the partnerships comes into view, and one of the builders was very specific about fees for this, fees for that, DC charges for this. And again, I'm not talking about people who build 50 houses. I'm talking to developers who maybe do between 2 and 6 houses a year. So the main thrust of it, though, was that land is an issue, profit margins, obviously, charges, and what have you. So basically, everything that was in that we've talked about over the last couple of months, and everything that was in the packages and the correspondence. So I don't have anything more to say about that. So we'll move on.
I can make a report for Jan and myself, and it's fairly short. We
Thank
really
you.
haven't come across any money hanging from trees or left out behind the back step, but there are possibilities through Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corp, private donors, the National Housing Strategy. But I think we have to be aware that when it comes to nonprofit housing, that form of housing will probably always require some kind of a fundraising, a community fundraising effort. So that's our report. I'll pass on.
Okay. Other committee members?
I can go for the
Thank
social and
you.
health one. Yeah. So I don't have a lot either. It's just very short. But a lot of what I was coming across in like social and health obstacles to attaining housing, which I don't think we've talked a lot about, is just the lack of information available to people who need it, like supports they can access or funding they can access. And I don't know if that would fall under like Jennifer's education portion of how we could do that. The Southeast Gray Health Center does have some education for people in low income, but I don't know if they do one in like accessing housing information, if that makes sense. So that's something I came across. When I was reading the article, I think Muriel sent that that was often one of the main issues, was just lack of knowledge of what they can access. So to make use of what we do have, even if it's limited, people aren't making the best of that because they don't have the information. And something else that I don't know if we talked a lot about, it came up before, where we didn't have a lot of accessible housing, accessible rentals that were affordable. And with our aging population, that's going to be an issue, as well as it said like 80% of people who are looking for affordable housing do live with some form of disability. So that's just kind of what I came up with and found from all of that we haven't really gone into a lot, but yeah, that's what I've been working on.
Okay, thank you.
Could I
Anyone?
I
just
would just like
interject?
to point out that Morgan presented a really, really thorough report to us a few months ago. So if you want to go back and look in the minutes from back a while ago, she did a bang up job before. So
Thanks, Jerry.
Yep,
Just
for sure.
just to interject on that one as well. Maybe when it comes to education, Southeast Gray, have you contacted Tanya Shute?
No.
If you want to contact her, she would be someone to talk to that could likely put you in the direction of who could do that type of training, because that would be something they could deliver through the Erskine Center for sure.
Tanya Shute, like SHOOT?
SHUTE.
Okay, thanks. Yep.
986-2222.
Perfect. Thank you.
And ask for
Yeah,
Tanya.
thanks for doing that, Dave, because one thing that I and Jerry have talked about is we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So, you know, it's out there. So that is good. Anybody else from the committee with your report on your expertise?
I've put together, I don't know, it's probably a mishmash of stuff. But I started with best practices or themes to keep in mind as we develop anything, actually. And some of them have already been referenced tonight, but I don't know how much detail to go into at the moment. Or like, I think I need to send this to everyone so you can go through it. But I can just sort of say the things I covered. Innovations in housing, I think we've already talked these at different times, but prefabricated modular houses, building with, well, maybe we haven't talked, building with C-can containers, that's one I was looking at online, tiny homes. That could be either permanent or perhaps temporary use for people who are homeless or down and out in terms of money at this point. And also, Jerry has sent this link as well, but it came out from the Council on Aging, and it was around doing other initiatives besides long-term care buildings, institutions. And it also had an interview and showing different kind of housing setup in Denmark. So that was quite interesting, but in Denmark, they were building actual senior specific or for people with disabilities, it could be too, like physical disabilities, but very accessible housing, like from ground up, but individual houses or units, and then they built the services in around people to keep them in homes, their own homes. Anyways, I think there's more than just seniors that need that kind of housing. They need the supports too. And then I talked about, or I've got information about community land trusts. And I did find some Canadian examples too. It's not, but the first one happens to be from the States. I don't want to read that or go through it all, but cooperatives was another possibility. And I do know someone who's involved with the Glassworks Cooperative project in Owen Sound. But there's on their website, they have a lot of other information about cooperatives from both Canadian and US experience. And then there are rent to own programs, but they seem to be, or the examples I could find were like real estate companies, I think. Or they were out to make some money off of it too. But there were those kind of programs, and I thought there might be offshoots that one could develop. There was a program in Hamilton. There's a fair bit of information on their website about that. Anyways, there was another, there was some information, I can't find it right now, but it was on developing a housing corporation. There's a whole booklet, I'd say, or plus toolkit of forms and things to use. And I could send that to people too to look at. I hesitate to give the website. I could do that too, and you could seek it on your own, but they do follow up asking for feedback. So it just depends on whether you want to do that. I have not yet, but I'm going to, because it's actually really very good. It's very comprehensive. So I think I should just send this stuff to everyone. That be okay?
Councillor Shipson, I think you are having a microphone issue again.
It actually looks frozen.
Muriel and the rest of the committee, I will just mention that I have been in touch with Sherry Huber, who is the manager of the Owen Sound Community Housing Group. I wondered if she might present tonight, but she's busy with audits, so she has agreed to be part of the program next month. So that's all about developing a housing corporation along the lines of what Muriel mentioned too. So that I'll get the information to you, Holly, as I get it for next meeting. Okay, Michael?
You know, I haven't seen many programs coming down, but I'm pretty sure with the election coming up, we're going to hear more. And again, I think that, you know, as we discussed, we want to be shovel ready for our project as soon as we're able to get funding. And I know the township is always listening, and, you know, we do have a company that looks for grant matches and stuff like that for programs that's out there for us. And I think that, you know, we should be talking and making sure that they're watching for us. And I mean, now that we do have some parcels of land, if we can, you know, finalize one of these and then get someone like Wilson in to have a look and see, I think, you know, we need to jump on one of these if the money is there. If we can get some free money, we need to do it. And like at the end of this thing, if we want to be like the one in Durham, or, you know, if we want to partner with Grey County on one, but I mean, I like both programs, but the one in Durham, it just seems that you give them the land and you walk away for 20 years and you let them manage it. And I mean, the cost for those residents over there were, you know, $700. Well, I don't think we can manage one within our department for $700 a month, and they look after everything, and that includes their hydro. So for a starter, and like, I don't want to put that property out in Broughton Station out of the works. I think someone should be looking at that one and finding out, because that piece of property out there, as I said, if you sell a couple of lots off the side road and build a couple of buildings in there, just because it's out in there, I believe if it's one owner building a building out there, it shouldn't be that hard for a well to look after that building if it's an owner owning it and renting out those places. So I would think Wilson's would be in for that one too, when it comes to getting the piece of property for nothing and helping them out with charges. So, and then on tonight's news and the Barrie News, Empower Simcoe was on there with the Journey Home program that they're trying to get people out of the motel rooms now that things have opened back up. The motels are wanting the rooms to rent out to people on weekly basis now. They don't want people living in them, so they're kicking them out. So they're trying to find landlords to take these people, and then they're offering them 3 months rent, insurance, and stuff like that as an incentive to landlords to take these residents in. So, I mean, there's programs out there. I mean, it's all you hear on the news. So, as I said, I'm pretty sure we're going to hear a lot more money coming, but we just need to be ready. Martin, are you back on?
I just,
Go ahead, Muriel.
the Wilson project, is there information on a website or on paper somewhere?
I don't know the answer to that. You might Google Wilson Corp and see, but I could put together a few lines from our visit and from the information. I can pick Michael's and Martin's brains and put together just a few lines and send out to the committee members. I think what Michael had talked about is that you give them the land, a minimum half acre, and then you walk away. It's not quite that simple, but they do everything. They do the interaction with Grey County Housing. They retain ownership of the land, of the property, the building, and so they do the maintenance. And so yeah, and I would not be afraid of a rural property either. I think we've got to start thinking way out of the box on this. So, Martin, are you back on?
We still can't hear you, Martin.
Yeah. So I think what we'll do is, unless there are any other comments from H1, the committee updates, we'll move on to correspondence.
Hey, Jerry,
And,
before you go, you still have that presentation that they sent you. Did Muriel get a copy of that from?
Oh, right. No, thank you, Michael. I do have something in the email form, Muriel, that I can send out. I'll send it to all committee members. Yeah.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Given the hour, I'm wondering if perhaps what we could do is just all be aware of 9.1 through to 9.6. A lot of good information there. Could we, do we need a motion and a seconder? So Michael moves, Martin seconds that we will accept the correspondence, to receive the items of correspondence. Are you back on, Martin? So next meeting would be the next business, and that would be April. Tuesday would be the 19th. Tuesday, the 19th of April. Does that suit everyone?
Sorry, Jerry, it's Holly. The next meeting we have scheduled is the 26th of April.
Okay, my apologies. 26th of April, Tuesday, April 26th. Okay, at 7 p.m. Okay, anything else anyone wants to add before we adjourn? I'm trying to read your lips, Martin, but I can't do it. Thank you all for your time tonight. Lots of good information, lots of reason to be optimistic, I think so. Michael?
Yeah, I'm just gonna follow up to Dave. I just kind of wondering, he said he was gonna look at those two places in the urban center here, but I'm just kind of wondering if he's gonna get Clint to look at what it would take for a place like the ones in the rural area. He's muted.
Get Clint to look. I'll talk to Clint about all 4 properties, and Jim Ellis is working on the setbacks from the transfer station on Ida Street. That's the biggest challenge there. But Clint and I will go over all 4 properties, and hopefully he could come to the next meeting and give a planning update on those, or a report on the status of them.
A property that didn't show up, I was thinking it might show up, is there's property out in Holstein along the road there. How much of that property do we own that's on the way to the school?
Yeah, and that's the old railway property. Some of that is there. That didn't show up on my report, so let me make a note of that. I'll just number 5. I'll just call it Holstein Railway property.
As I said, we're thinking, you know, the rural area too. We need just as many rural houses, you know, small houses as we do in town. So.
Yep, that's a possibility. I mean, the other thing is that we're not there yet, but maybe, you know, in years ahead, that maybe we need to look at intertwining some developments with, you know, beside parklands, and cut back on parkland size, and put the unaffordable multi-residential type of facility in there. But
I don't
that's
like
down
giving
the
up
road.
green space.
Okay. Okay, any final thoughts from anyone? Again, thank you all for your time. Thanks for committee members and those who have of staff and council who've sat in, and yeah, and if there's anything that people come up with after the meeting, fire it off to Martin or myself, and we can circulate stuff or circulate to the whole committee. And I think we'll call for a motion to adjourn. Michael? And seconded by Muriel. So thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Again.